Has the black semi-truck been canceled? Or there are other possible titles. Yeah, does it not work? Or does Tesla dislike the black semi-truck, etc.? So today's talk really dives into what's happening with the sort of junior semi and what we can expect from that truck going forward, because we've seen so little of it. We also covered today sort of updates on what's going on with Daimler Benz and their plans. And as usual, we'll review some things regarding what's going on in the stock market and Tesla's stock price reaching and maintaining the $360 stock price that allows them to pay off debt using the new method that we discussed. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, please take time to like and subscribe. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Also note, we're on Patreon, could use some support there, and we also would appreciate it if you take 10 seconds to watch a couple of ads, because that also supports the future of the channel. We like to cover at least once every couple of weeks the latest on what's going on with the trucks. There are a number of sort of items we could highlight. The first one is that we think that we're about 250,000 cars away from truck production beginning. That number of vehicles is probably going to take about 6 months to produce in terms of Model 3s. And what happens with trucks is that by then the Gigafactory will actually, be perhaps 10% further along with the next round of expansion to get up to more battery production to meet demand. The one fly in the ointment is the fact that if Europe has as strong as demand as we're expecting, that could actually delay the truck, because there just aren't going to be the battery packs available to provide to the truck. So let's get on to our focus for today. As you've noticed, the concentration of effort and media coverage has been towards the silver truck as it traveled across the country, visiting a variety of clients. There's been little coverage presented to the black semi, hence why we wanted to cover it today for a different look at what's going on in trucks, no repeats, and have an opportunity to sort of tear apart what's going on with this vehicle. There are a few sort of general notes to make. We're going to show photos over my shoulder and intermittently of the truck so you guys know what the story is on it. The bottom line is that the truck does not have a fairing for highways, which is the large device on top of the truck that helps lower or it increases fuel economy for actually 5% by better controlling the wind as it hits with the truck. You'll notice with the black truck, the fairing is actually fairly short and doesn't lend itself to the covering necessary to properly fit with a regular container or trailer that you'd have on a semi, and hence we don't see it on the highway a great deal for long trips. And so this brings up the question that I wanted to know, everybody wanted to know, what's the deal with the black semi, given that there's no fairing and it looks as though it has a shorter wheelbase and a smaller battery than its sister truck, the silver 300-mile truck that Tesla is running across the country? The answer that comes up is that Elon Musk is the type of person that, as you know, the Tesla LA headquarters that he operates out of for SpaceX and other things, as well as for Tesla's design studio, is actually right next to pretty much the port of Los Angeles. And the port is one of the, perhaps the largest freight movers in the United States. And the pollution coming from both ships and the trucks moving the freight off the docks is severe and really makes for miserable living conditions for the people of Los Angeles during particularly the summers when there are no winds to sort of blow the pollution inland. So The answer is that the other answer is illustrated in the fact that if you look at the mule that Tesla was testing with, instead of just testing with a regular box behind the truck or trailer behind the truck, the mule that Tesla was testing with was actually a shipping container. So it's very clear that one of the target markets for this truck in the early days is to go after pollution on the docks, and the goal here being, I think, the Los Angeles dock pollution, as you try to provide vehicles that will address, all that pollution that's generated by those trucks coming in. There are about 5 points I'd like to cover in terms of what's happening with this truck and the drayage solution that it's targeted at. Number one is that the truck has about a 10% shorter wheelbase than the silver long-range truck. That shorter wheelbase facilitates better turning radius in short spaces. Number one. Number two, when you're looking at distances of as little as a quarter of a mile from the dock to the train line or so, number one. Number two, tight spaces that you might have to move in, so therefore the shorter wheelbase is helpful in that process. Number three, it turns out that the port facilities around the world are 24-hour operations. So what this means then is that unlike the long-range solutions that you have with a 300 to 500 mile truck, the truck isn't going that far, but it's doing a lot of trips, and it has to be able to operate 24 hours a day. Now, it's interesting because the 24-hour day operation facilitates something very interesting, which is when you deal with a truck that sits, let's say, at Walmart, once the deliveries are done, the stores are closed for a certain period of time, so therefore you have time where the trucks are idle, and you can even charge very slowly. When you have a 24-hour operation, you now have the problem of those trucks are being used by 3 different shifts of workers. So as a result, you do need rapid charging, number one. Number two, not only do you need rapid charging, but you also need the ability to possibly, bottom line is you have to have charging for it. It's on running 3 shifts, so you have to be able to manage those battery packs relative to that. What I was wanting to get to is the fact that because you have a 24-hour operation and you have all that freight coming out where you could amortize the cost of those trucks across that freight, the Drayage solution is one of the few areas around the world that electric vehicles are being used heavily, because the trucks are costing as much as $300,000 a piece. And because of the volume of usage and the fact that the ports often have monopolies, the cost of those trucks can be blended into the freight much easier than it can when the operation is simply an 8-hour operation, as we find in a lot of the sort of grocery store applications that we're seeing. So bottom line, as electric trucks, let's say, are double the price of a normal diesel truck, it's a no-brainer that port facilities are able to handle the cost of those very differently. The next thing I wanted to cover is something called the cab-over phenomenon. In the case of both Tesla trucks, obviously there's a nose to the vehicle, and then the driver sits behind that nose. In the case of a structure called cab-over, Nikola just released images of a cab-over design where basically the driver is sitting on top of the wheel. When you have that design, evidently that's what's required in Europe. It works out nicely because now you have a very short turning radius for the truck, which works better in tight spaces, number one. Number two, the problem with a cab-over is if you have to go long distances, that cab-over structure with the driver sitting on top of the wheel makes for a very uncomfortable ride. So the way Tesla has set up both trucks is sort of the driver in the midpoint between wheels in the sitting position, which is the most comfortable for the driver, but it doesn't lend itself to the tight turning radius that the cab over design has. And it'll be interesting to see whether Tesla makes any effort to move into that. To be honest with you, I do not think that the cab over issue is a big one, because there's so much demand and so little supply for this truck that any configuration that customers can get it, they will take it. But I wouldn't be surprised to see that pop up. In the application of drayage, I'm a little bit stunned right now at the behavior of Daimler-Benz. And the reason is that Daimler just announced a 250-mile truck that they're giving away free to their large customers. It turns out, based on the cost of current batteries, the 18650 battery in particular, in that truck, the cost of that battery pack is on the order of $210,000. And when you load on a trailer and a truck to that, the net cost is probably about $300,000 for that vehicle. And the question that comes up is, given that the drayage community will pay for that, I'm very surprised to see that Daimler hasn't been producing these trucks and delivering it as a drayage or freight solution for quite a while, because the high price associated with the battery pack for that vehicle is not a big deal. I do think this might highlight the fact that Daimler is choosing to keep free prototypes going until it's a known quantity, the cost of battery and the life cycle of those batteries, etc. So I think they're really protecting their reputation relative to what they've stated they will do for customers and deliver. So that's a credit to them. The final note I wanted to make on this whole thing is that the main reason why we haven't been actually seeing the black truck a great deal is that it can't run the same range as a 300-mile truck and wasn't designed to do so. I believe the battery pack lines up for someplace in the 100 to 150-mile range, and the lack of the fairing on top sort of confirms that. So the goal wasn't to have both trucks running together. It's our belief that the black truck is actually, because it's a drayage or freight-focused solution, it's actually being transitioned or presented for review in port facilities where appropriate. And so we don't pick up all the photos and so forth that you would see from open highways, because where it'd be introduced and tested would be in port facilities that really don't give access to the general public. So therefore it's kind of hard to pick up all the videos and photos that we've been getting of the silver truck. So, I think that it's fascinating to me that, I want to say the intensity of truck solutions coming from Tesla, because when this whole party started, the suggestion was that the trucks were just an afterthought. And when you look at all the designs, effort that was made by Tesla, and the fact that they've shown what markets they're going after with the truck, it's clear that it was a well thought out concept, and it sent people scrambling, especially Daimler, which is the biggest player in the space. I'm kind of heading out of our show in this section today by a number of questions about what Daimler is trying to do. From what we've seen, they obviously don't have a response to the truck right now. Their response process is to simply give away free vehicles that are sort of retrofitted Freightliner trucks in the United States that really don't, they don't offer suggestions that Daimler is aggressively coming after Tesla. There's no effort to create a truck with a seating position in the middle of the truck comparable to Tesla. They're sticking with the old designs and simply throwing or retrofitting an electric battery inside, number one. And then another thing is that Daimler has announced that by 2021, that's when they plan to have their electric solutions on the road. The translation to this is that Daimler is really waiting for a number of battery partners to come up with a solution that makes the truck viable and in the interim, they'll just be giving away a group of trucks each year to potential customers to slow the transition potentially to the Tesla solution before Daimler has one. I think this is unfortunate to see such a great company not come in at least with some design modifications to allow them to be Tesla competitive. But I'm hoping that they get something done, because there's definitely too many trucks to be produced for Tesla to do it. And trucks are the most important polluter. They represent, as Tesla has pointed out, the trucks represent 5% of the vehicles on the road, but 25% of the pollution, which is why Elon Musk and Tesla has decided to go after, solutions in that space. So I have to admit that I'd love to see mega trucks off the road and moved into the electric space. And so I have to admit I'm kind of rooting for Daimler to get this figured out, but they're kind of stuck right now because they don't have Tesla's 2170 battery, and the 18650 batteries are basically too heavy and therefore don't provide a lot of freight weight once built out in a reasonable range configuration. So, I think it's kind of fascinating. The last part of what I wanted to cover today is I have a dialogue going with a viewer from our last video regarding, we did an options class item in our last show, and we were discussing the fact that there's a study that I wanted you to consider doing, which is in the final day of trading each day, watch the movement of sort of any stock price that moves a great deal. It could be Google, it could be Tesla, it could be any of these. But you'll notice that, for example, Tesla has a trading range every day of probably 8 to 10 points. There are certain very powerful folks on Wall Street that have techniques they can use to manipulate the stock price. And what they tend to do is force the stock price as low as possible for the day, causing a whole bunch of people who had call options to lose money. So the analysis that we came up with was that the goal or the process is to force the stock price in a position to help as many people as possible lose money on their options, because the people who wrote the options make money if they don't, if those options don't finish in the money, if you will. They don't have to pay out any money in that situation, so they can use their power to first create them and let people think they're going to get a win, and then take it all the way using certain techniques during the final day of trading. The example presented by our viewer was the fact that on Friday, December 7th, Tesla's stock price got up to $379 on the high, which was driven by the news of the fact that Tesla's offering 50% cash, 50% stock to retire the debt that's due on March 1st of 2019. That news basically is pushing the stock price of Tesla up despite a down market, because it really shows the strength and how well the company is doing. What basically happened is the stock price went to $379, as the market crash went as low as $357 and finished up at $363. But all the people at price points like $365, $370, $375, $380, all of those folks that had call options lost money. So it's interesting to watch this, because once you start to develop a sense for how this all works, I would say that I'm not a registered rep, but a smart thing to consider might be to consider looking for the stocks at the apex and buying puts on those stocks in the morning and then selling them at the end of the day before the stock market close, because you can see the effort being made by those powerful folks to sort of wipe out those that have purchased call options from them. So I think it's an interesting strategy. We got a chance to watch it happen yesterday. I'm kind of laser focused on Tesla, but on a weekly basis, it's, I think, really worth watching what happens to their stock price on 3-hour increments on Fridays, especially if it's the third week of the month, because that's when the most options are expiring. And that's when I think the shenanigans of how this all works are on sort of blatant display and interesting to watch. And if you watch it enough and get comfortable enough, you can make a great deal of money. In the case that I just described, Tesla's stock price got to $379. The puts at $375 on Tesla were likely in the range of $50 a piece. At that point, if you had purchased those puts, let's say you bought one of them at $50, by the end of the day that option was selling for $1,200 a piece, because you had the stock go from $379 back down basically to $357 and finish up at $363. That's still $12 to $15 in the money. So you can see what the option value is, which is a great return for 5 hours worth of time and attention. And so hence why options are actually a really interesting thing to do. Very risky, not a good idea for most people, but if you're willing to do the homework, there's an opportunity to make a great deal of money. So I wanted to thank you all for taking time out to join us. This is it's been great. I just finished my 20 leg lifts with my 5-pound weights. Awesome. I'm going to go get a walk in here. Plenty of water along with omega-3s that we talked about. And still haven't gotten into the fasting of the diet stuff. If any of you are doing fasting, let me know how you do it and how it's working, because I like to eat. I don't overeat, but it's nice to learn from other folks that are introducing eating habits and techniques that help with the aging process. Also open and encourage you to share with us any ideas you guys have for shows that we might want to consider, and look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow with our next show that's coming out. We're going to dabble a little bit in the trucks again, but we're also getting into sort of forecasting what we think is going to happen for Tesla over the next 60 to 90 days. In particular, as you probably know, there's this open discussion going on as to whether Tesla should dive into purchasing plants from General Motors and converting them so that they can expand production. And that's sort of the target of what our next show is about, and we look forward to getting into that. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, please like and subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss anything. Also want to encourage you to support on Patreon. Our link is below in our description. And I hope you have a wonderful Saturday, and thanks for taking time out. Tschüss, German, au revoir, French, lehitraot, Hebrew, Choda Hafez, Farsi, farvel, Dutch, ni hao ma, Chinese, and in Jamaica, and adios. In Jamaica we say, "Nof respect wak woodman." Thank you very much, and have a great day.